Assalamu alaikum dear students. Hope you all are doing well. This is Tahira Liaquat, lecturer from University of Education, Vihari campus. So, in this series of SDLC model, today we are going to discuss the last model, which is software prototype model. So, after attending this lecture, you will be able to define software prototype. You will be able to understand the mechanism of software prototype and differentiate it. So first of all, we will define what is prototyping. So basically, prototype is a working model of software with some limited functionality. It has some small functionality. The prototype does not always hold the exact logic used in the actual software application and is an extra effort to be considered under effort estimation. Prototyping is used to allow the users evaluate developer proposal and try them out before implementation. It also helps understand the requirements which are user specific and may not have been considered by the developer during the product design. So we have certain stepwise approach that explain to design a software prototype. So there are certain steps, which first one is basic requirement identification, developing the initial prototype, review of the prototype, and revision and enhancement of the prototype. So first step is basic requirement identification. As we all know that we cannot develop any software without the requirement identification. So this step involves understanding the very basic product requirements, especially in terms of user interface. The more intricate details of the internal design and external aspects like performance and security can be ignored at this stage. So basically, at this stage, we need to focus only on some basic requirements, and we have to gather that. So in the next step, we will develop the initial prototype. The initial prototype is developed at this stage and where the very basic requirements are showcased and user interfaces are provided. These features may not exactly work in the same manner internally in the actual software developed, while the workarounds are used to give the same look and feel to the customer in the prototype developed. So basically, what here we are going to do is we are providing a sample of our system to our customer so that it can build some understanding. So after we develop the initial prototype, the next step is to review that prototype. The prototype developed is then presented to customer and other important stakeholders in the project. The feedback is collected in an organized manner and used for further enhancements in the product under development. So last step is to revise and enhance the prototype. The feedback and the review comments are discussed during this stage, and some negotiations happen with the customer based on factors like time and budget constraints and technical feasibility of the actual implementation. The changes accepted are again incorporated in the new prototype developed, and the cycle repeats until the customer expectations are met. Prototypes can have horizontal or vertical dimensions. A horizontal prototype displays the user interface for the product and gives a broader view of the entire system without concentrating on internal functions. A vertical prototype, on the other side, is a detailed elaboration of specific function or a subsystem of the product. The purpose of both horizontal and vertical prototype is different. Horizontal prototypes are used to get more information on the user interface level and the business requirements. It can even be presented in the sales demos to get business in the market. Vertical prototypes are technical in nature and are used to get details of the exact functioning of the subsystems. For example, database requirements, interactions, and data processing loads in a given subsystem. So, we have certain types of software prototyping. There are 4 basic types: throwaway, rapid prototyping, evolutionary prototyping, incremental prototyping, and extreme prototyping. So, there are different types of software prototypes used in the industry. First one is a throwaway or rapid prototyping. Throwaway prototyping is also called as rapid or close-ended prototyping. This type of prototyping uses a very little efforts with minimum requirement analysis to build a prototype. Once the actual requirements are understood, the prototyping is discarded and the actual system is developed with a much clearer understanding for user requirements. Second one is evolutionary prototyping. Evolutionary prototyping, also called the breadboard prototyping, and it is based on building actual functional prototypes with minimum functionality in the beginning. The prototype developed forms the heart of the future prototypes on top of which the entire system is built. By using evolutionary prototyping, the well understood requirements are included in the prototype and the requirements are added as and when they are understood. The next is incremental prototyping. It refers to build multiple functional prototypes of the various subsystems and then integrating all the available prototypes to form a complete system. The third one is extreme prototyping. Extreme prototyping is used in web development domain. It consists of 3 sequential phases. First, a basic prototype with all existing pages presented in the HTML format. Then the data processing is simulated using prototype service layer. Finally, the services are implemented and integrated into the final prototype. This process is known as extreme prototyping, used to draw attention to the second phase of the process, where fully functional user interface is developed with a very little regard to the actual service. So here we will see where we can apply the software prototyping. Software prototyping is most useful in development of system having high levels of user interactions, such as online systems, systems which need user to fill out forms or go through various screens before data is processed. It can use prototyping very effectively to give the exact look and feel even before the actual software is developed. Software that involves too much of data processing and most of the functionality is internal with very little user interface, thus does not usually benefit from prototyping. Prototype development could be an extra overhead in such projects and may need a lot of extra effort. So again, here we are going to discuss the advantages and disadvantages of the software prototyping. Software prototyping is used in typical cases and the decision should be taken very carefully so that the efforts spent in building the prototype add considerable value to final software developed. The model has its own advantages and disadvantages. The advantages of the prototyping model are increased user involvement in the product even before its implementation. Since a working model of the system is displayed, the user gets a better understanding of the system being developed. It reduced time and cost as the defects can be detected much earlier. Quicker user feedback is available, leading to better solutions. Missing functionality can be identified easily. Confusing or difficult functions can be identified. So here are some disadvantages of the prototype model. Risk of insufficient requirement analysis owing to too much dependency on the prototype. Users may get confused in the prototypes and actual system. Obviously, if they have two copies, then it can be confusing for the customer that we have some functionality at the very first prototype and in the later system we may not having that functionality or that can be changed. So it can be very confusing for the customer. Practically, this methodology may increase the complexity of the system as the scope of system may expand beyond original plans. Developers may try to reuse the existing prototypes to build the actual system even when it is not technically feasible. The efforts invested in business prototypes may be too much if it is not monitored properly. So, depending upon the need of the project, we have to choose one of the SDLC models and have to follow that model to build our project or software. As I have discussed many of the models and they have certain advantages and limitations, and they also have certain criteria to be followed. So, not every model is for every project. So, what we have to do is we have to understand very clearly what kind of our project is, and we have to choose one of these models to follow and develop that software. By using more complex software model can lead to our system to failure. So we have to be very careful in selection of these models. So this is the end of the lecture and end of the topic. I hope you all understand it well. So, inshallah, I will come with the next topic in the next lecture. See you then. Allah Hafiz.